Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. And today I'm kind of an irritated Yankee Marshal because there is a story in the news right now that really is getting my goat, so to say. And it's a story that is really upsetting me for two reasons. One, because I hate the person involved, Governor Cuomo in New York. Can't stand that guy. And two, because it is a very egregious attack on gun rights in this country. Now, this story that I'm about to talk about is something, like I say, that's got me really riled up. Like I said, partially because I hate this jackass, and partially because this is a new avenue of attack. Something they're trying out now to go after guns, because they know they're failing in the courts as far as their other arguments against the Second Amendment and their reasons to restrict the Second Amendment. They know those things are falling like dominoes. All their laws on capacity and all of these other things, and types of guns, and when you can buy them and when you can't, all this other shit they're trying, they know it's falling. It's not working. These are infringements on the Second Amendment that do nothing to stop crime, and it's becoming apparent, and the courts are recognizing that. So they're panicking. So they have to figure out other ways to attack gun rights. And New York and California, places like that. And New York is one of the forefronts. California and New York, usually it starts there, starting in New York this time. What they've decided to do, since there is a ban on actually suing manufacturers for their products used in crimes, not just guns, but you can't go out and sue Ford if a drunk driver runs over your children in an F-150. You can't go, so Ford, you should have never made that car that could be bought by someone who has a drinking problem. That ain't going to hold up in court. And it doesn't hold up with guns either. It doesn't make any sense. If you produce a firearm that's made for one purpose or another purpose, if someone uses it illegally, if it's meant to even if it's meant to be deadly, if it's meant to be deadly in situations where you're at risk and you're justified in using deadly force, well, if someone misuses that, that's not the manufacturer's fault, period. Just like if someone rents a car, drives it through a crowd of people and kills several of them, the car rental company should not be liable for that. Neither should the car manufacturer be liable for that. It just doesn't make sense. But when you say it with guns, when you say maybe they should be with guns, some people will be like, yeah, they should. It's not because they actually believe that. It's because they just want to get rid of guns. And that's what Cuomo's doing. He has decided to pass legislation, and he signed it, where they can say now that, well, you can't go after a manufacturer for the crime that was committed by a gun, but you can go after him for being a public nuisance. And the only nuisance here is they're creating a nuisance lawsuit system, just a harassment system for gun manufacturers, where they can file complaint after complaint after complaint after complaint against gun manufacturers and run them out of business. That's what this is all about. It's about bankrupting the gun companies. They want to make it to where it is not financially beneficial to be in the gun business, because New York will sue you crazy. They won't win any lawsuits. They won't actually succeed in any of them, but the legal fees you'll pay to just fight all of them so that you don't get summary judgments for not showing up will bankrupt you. Not in the long run even, just in the short run. And they know that. Because basically every borough will be filing 100 lawsuits a day against gun manufacturers. And they'll have to fight those in court. Up till now, there is a federal law that says that ain't happening. So they had to kind of, like I said, circumvent it. Instead of saying, it's because of the crime that was committed, it's because the crimes themselves are a public nuisance. Well, what about deaths by automobile, car crashes, drunk drivers, etc.? Do we get to say cars or alcohol? Alcohol is involved in most crimes, especially violent crimes, domestic crimes especially. So do we get to say alcohol is a public nuisance because of all the crime that happens because alcohol's around? We should sue the manufacturers of alcohol every time there's a crime that involves alcohol? No, you would never, ever think that that had any legal merit whatsoever, and neither does this thing they're saying. Which goes to show you, they don't think this actually has a chance of winning any judgments against gun manufacturers. They just want to make it possible to file as many lawsuits against them as you want and have them actually have to be heard instead of just rejected offhand. Up until now, all the gun manufacturers have pretty much had to do is keep a lawyer on retainer who every time someone bothers to file a lawsuit, they get a little letter sent to the judge saying, hey, this violates this national order, blah, 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 and it gets dismissed. Because they're like, I'm going after Remington because some guy went crazy and shot my grandpa. Well, the judge would be like, the law says you can't do that, dismissed. But because they're adding this wrinkle, it's a public nuisance. They think they're being clever. But this is the best they can be clever at. This is so transparent. And of course, they use all the same lies that they usually use to try to justify themselves. Oh, violent crime, homicides up 23% this year over last year when we were in lockdown. They don't say like, oh, crime's still at like generational lows. And it's only got a little blip now because we had very little crime last year to compare it to. And plus some of the crime that would have occurred then is occurring now. They just manipulate statistics. He even told one outright lie. He said, guns are the number one cause of premature death in this country. Pretty sure if you go over to CDC and look at what the premature death causes are, the number one ones are cigarettes, alcohol, heart disease, and just being a general lazy fat ass. Or all way above guns. Auto accidents, everything. Way above guns. Now, he could be almost right if you look at like 16 to 25. Because in that category, suicides are like the second or third highest cause of premature death. So, and guns are often used in suicides. But you don't stop a suicide by taking away the tool. Like if someone says, I'm going to blow my brains out. I take your gun, and I go, well, now you're totally safe because I took your gun. Try to kill yourself now. Here's some rope. You know, it doesn't make sense. It's just garbage they spew. Guns are not the number one cause of premature death, not even among the teenage group. But, you know, some of the things they say in this legislation, some of the stuff they do is good. I'm not going to say it's all bad. Because they do set aside a lot of money for after-school programs, creating jobs for at-risk inner-city youths, minorities, etc., so that they won't be in gangs and on the street. And the reason that that's in this legislation is basically them admitting that the problem is not a gun problem, it's a gang problem. Surprise, surprise, New York has a gang problem. They've always had a gang problem. And things are getting worse right now because they have a parole board that's letting out every gangbanger and everything else that they've ever arrested. And even people that have been arrested for serious crimes that aren't affiliated with gangs, they're just letting them all out. Instead of keeping violent criminals locked up and not just keep replenishing the courts, the for-profit prison systems with low-risk offenders, they're letting out the dangerous people because they're harder to take care of. So it's a whole debacle there. And plus, like I say, this here is also, Andrew Cuomo is just using it as a smokescreen. You know, he just surrendered his emergency powers from the pandemic. And so that he declares another emergency a couple of days later so he can increase his power again. That sounds suspicious. It sounds to me like he needs to be in complete control because he needs to be able to control things enough to maintain this persona that he is not a lecherous, entitled bag of shit, which he is. He needs to maintain that persona because what he really is just those things. He tries to wrap himself in this false persona of a woke progressive, but really he's just a lecherous old rich man who feels he's better than everybody else. He's an elitist and he violates the rights of women all the time. He's a lecherous old asshole. But his career depends on people thinking that he's a woke progressive. So he has to maintain control of the narrative, and he has to do something like this so people will be talking about this instead about, what about all those women you treated improperly? He doesn't want them saying that. He'd rather them say, look, Cuomo's going after gun manufacturers in a really unfair and nasty way. He's fine because the anti-gunners will still love me for that. Whereas if you point out the fact that I, like I said, am a fucking old nasty lech, gross old nasty lech, they probably won't support me quite so much, as he saw recently. So that's part of what it is right there. Just Andrew Cuomo protecting himself. But the main part of it is going after gun manufacturers. That's who they're after here. They are not after people in any way are they trying to stop crime. They know they're not going to stop crime by going after suing gun manufacturers. That's just trying to drive them out of business. They know the problem is gangs. And the same lie they keep telling about children dying at an alarming rate. They want to make it sound like some little 7-year-old's playing in the yard and gets shot. No, most of those deaths, the vast majority of those deaths, are 15 to 19-year-olds, which they consider children by the statistics, that are in gangs killing each other. That's why they address the gang issues in the legislation, because they know it's a gang problem. And I think right now what they're hoping is, if we start bankrupting gun manufacturers, but we also deal with the real problem of gangs and inner city youth, maybe crime will come down a little bit and we can say it was suing the gun manufacturers that was doing it. So they're being kind of clever here, but it's still really transparent. And because the one things they want to sue the gun manufacturers over, it's just ridiculous from a legal or logic standpoint, period. But it's what they're trying to do. So I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. Like I said, it's got me irritated because I just fucking hate Cuomo with a passion. And this is just a disgusting bag of shit like he is, trying to divert attention by attacking our rights. And it's him winning favor with the same groups that have been kind of turning on him lately because he can't keep his hands to himself. It's all about him protecting his political career. He doesn't care about any of these things. He just wants to be powerful. So it's very transparent. It's very obvious. It's disgusting. He needs to not be governor anymore, period. But that's what they're up to. I wanted everybody to be aware of this. So pay attention. There might be some lawsuits coming up to fight this, hopefully. We might need to be forming a collection to defend the gun manufacturers until this law can be overturned. So keep your eyes open because that's what's going on. And if we allow things like this to stand in New York, I know a lot of people go, well, California and New York are lost causes. Why should we help? Because if they stand there, they move other places. Stuff moved from California to Oregon and Washington. It moved from Oregon and Washington to places like Virginia and even Nevada. And into Texas even trying. So this stuff spreads if you allow it to stand. And we shouldn't allow this to stand. There's no real fight to fight right now. Just be aware of what could be coming soon down the track. Because like I said, this is just a ridiculous attempt for Cuomo to change the subject. And it's a chance for the gun grabbers like Bloomberg, who I'm sure is standing right behind him when he was coming up with this shit, whispering it in his ear. It's a chance for them to run the manufacturers out of business. If you can't control the actual product and the people buying the product legally because of the Second Amendment, well, then what you do is you dry up the source by bankrupting the manufacturers. And it doesn't matter if the manufacturer is in New York or Virginia or Texas. If one of their guns is used in a crime in New York City, people can be like, I'm filing a nuisance suit against them. So they can bankrupt gun companies everywhere. That's what all this is about, bankrupting the gun companies with nuisance lawsuits. They're the true nuisance, the people filing these lawsuits, because they know it serves no greater end other than bankrupting the companies that they don't like. So like I said, keep your eyes open, your ears open, and hopefully we'll have some news on this in the future that goes the way of overturning it. But like I said, pay attention and I'll keep you updated as best I can. All right, since I talked a little bit longer on that than I had hoped, I'm trying to keep this show down to 15 minutes every day. I'm going to move on now and close out the show with our pet rescue of the day. And today we have Wyatt, who was rescued by Foster D. Now, Wyatt is, just an American short-haired tabby here. Looks like a very handsome cat. Looks kind of full of himself in this picture, though. He's really giving the camera some attitude, I think. But he is an indoor-outdoor cat, as Wyatt put it. And I wanted to address that in a little bit here, saying some people hate it when cats are allowed to go outside. All my cats are indoor cats because we have coyotes out here, and they love to eat kitty cats. And we have owls up here who can get a cat, too. But I never understood why people get mad about people letting their cats out. They're cats. They want to get out if they can. They're not going to cause any harm. It's not like, a cat came into my yard and chewed up all the stuff, all the trees in the front yard. No, cats don't do that. They don't come and, one of them ripped a tire off my car. I don't understand why they're upset about cats coming in their yard. Like, someone's cat just went through my backyard. Big fucking deal. Squirrels go through your backyard too. Raccoons, possums. At least the cats aren't crawling under your crawl space and ripping your insulation out. So I've never understood why people have a thing against outdoor cats. Be friendly to outdoor cats. If you see a cat with a collar on, now if you do own a cat, put a collar and a tag on it like Wyatt here has. That's the one thing I want to make sure people know. Make sure your cat has a safety collar and a tag, and you might want to chip them if you can, because cats really should have the safety collars that snap off, because say they get hooked on something, a branch or something in a tree. So they might lose their tags. So make sure they're chipped if you want to get them back. Although cats are very good at coming home. Unless someone takes them, they're usually pretty good at coming home. They don't get lost like dogs. Not quite as often. My dogs, if I let them out, they would just go in a straight line until they never came back. Mavis would. Mavis is like that. But the cats always come back. Even they get out up here sometimes, they always come back. Usually we catch them under the deck, but they come back. So I just wanted to point that out. It's okay to have an indoor-outdoor cat. Just make sure that they're tagged, that they have their collars on, and make sure they're breakaway collars if they're going to be outside in situations where they might get hung up by that collar. Maybe not just to where they strangle themselves, but where they get stuck going through something and now something like a coyote's able to catch them. Because cats are very fast. But if they get hooked on something, they become a meal. So please, collars with safety latches on them that come detached when the cat gets stuck. And just in case they lose their collar, if you're afraid they're not going to come home, you might want to have them chipped. But just wanted to babble on about that for a little while here, do my Bob Barker thing, except for I'm not saying cut their balls off and stuff. Although I do say cut their balls off. If you're going to have an indoor-outdoor cat, it definitely needs to be spayed or neutered. That's another thing I am going to add. I am going to do my Bob Barker moment here. If you have an indoor-outdoor cat, and you don't have it spayed or neutered, then you really are irresponsible as far as I'm concerned. I can't see here if Wyatt has his balls or not, but I'm assuming not if he's an adopted kitty. So that's basically all I wanted to preach about, and I wanted to say thank you to Wyatt for being a good human, bringing himself in a nice little kitty cat there to share his life with, and congratulations to Wyatt for finding your forever home. All right, everybody, that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you come back again tomorrow. Until then, I just want to sign off as usual by saying, as far as the state of the world today is concerned, it is what it is. It could definitely be a lot worse, but it could be better too. And if we continue to pay attention and fight smart and hard for our rights and start to realize that those people that are trying to manipulate you through fear and anger, the profiteers, the big industry guys, they're not fighting for your rights. They're fighting for their money. If we start to realize that, like I said, what things will be in the very near future for people who love the Second Amendment and love freedom in general is better. Damn it. I am a grown-ass man.